I randomly generated a bunch of films I've never seen before. And those films have been stuck to this dartboard. 3 darts, 3 films. Let's see what happens. Genuinely, I don't know what to go for because they're all completely random, so we're just gonna send it and see what happens. Okay, I've gone for a safe 6. We'll take it. Oh, well that doesn't count because I've hit the 25, so I'm gonna have to go again. I didn't actually take that into consideration. Okay, there we go. Okay, keep it safe. Okay, I don't know what. Again, let's find out what we got. The Fall. I have no knowledge of this film at all. This sounds like some kind of action film. I don't know whether this fall is literal or metaphorical or whatever, but let's watch it. If you enjoyed this video, by the way, feel free to subscribe. It means a lot. Wow. This was something special. You get a lot of films which call themselves epics, and sometimes they fall short, but this one actually was an epic.
You know what epic means?
No.
I still got this tightness here. It's like I can't.
It means a really long story.
To the point where they went to so many different countries, all for the sake of getting a few seconds of footage. So The Fall was shot in around 20 different countries, and it took around 4 years to make. This was a full-on passion project, and you can see the passion in every single little moment. It was directed by Tarsem Singh. I hope I pronounced that correctly, because I have a really bad track record. I can see Tarsem trying to call action, and all these actors are like, bro, please let us finish this film. Please. I just want to go home. I don't want to run across a scorching desert. He financed everything himself, apparently no studio involvement. My guy took this idea and said, I am going to make this even if it kills me. So the film is set in a 1920s Los Angeles hospital, and it follows Roy Walker, played by Lee Pace. So Roy is a Hollywood stuntman, and he is paralysed after a fall. There you go, there's the title for you. You see this happen in the opening sequence, which is one of the most beautiful openings to a film I've ever seen. And I've seen Chicken Run. So Roy meets Alexandria, who is played by Katinka Untaru. She's a Romanian immigrant girl who has broken her arm, also after a fall. There's a lot of falling in this film, as you can see. Alexandria has a very vivid imagination. What begins as a simple bedtime story told to pass the time evolves into an epic fantasy, sprawling across deserts, islands, and palaces. Yes, this film looks insane. See, the catch of the film is that Roy's story isn't real. I mean, no one saw that coming. There's just so many believable elements.
Butterfly Reef. That's where Governor Odious chose to banish our heroes.
He uses the epic story to manipulate Alexandria into stealing morphine so he can end his life. So he's kind of given up all hope. The story he tells is of masked bandits hunting down an evil governor. It mirrors his own heartbreak, bitterness, and disillusionment, and it's a pinnacle of self-pity, but I couldn't help relating to the guy because he's in a terrible situation, and I guess this is the way of him getting out of it. But Alexandria's innocence and love for the story he tells gradually begins to change its course, and even Roy himself. At its heart, The Fall is about the transformative power of storytelling. It's an escape, but it's also a form of connection, and Roy basically spins his narrative as a means to an end, but Alexandria, who is effectively the audience in this scenario, she kind of shapes Roy's story with her presence. If she wasn't there, then he would not be around. She becomes in control of Roy's fate. She's pretty much the only reason he's still alive. She saves Roy, not through reason, but through the sheer force of believing in his lies enough to turn them into something beautiful. And the beauty of The Fall is in its unstable relationship between fantasy and reality. It can get a little bit jarring when you're watching it because you are trying to figure things out as they go along, and then things immediately shift because Alexandria's perspective shifts and it gets a little bit muddled up, which I think maybe has contributed to the initial reception, and then you actually realise what's going on, and oh my god, it's amazing. The heroes in Roy's story are visual manifestations of real people from the hospital, so in that sense, it's very Wizard of Oz. Although this film was apparently inspired by a film called Yo Ho Ho, which is a great name, and with a little bit of research you can definitely see the resemblance between the two. So Tarsem had a background in commercials and music videos, so he's very much aligned to visual storytelling. In a sense, it's kind of his bread and butter. I think to him, writing was secondary, you know, something he got really good at later on. It just kind of happened, but his priority seemed to be, let's capture as much beautiful stuff as we can. My god, it worked. And it shows because the film looks incredible. Every frame is vibrant and full of wonder. There was this one shot very early on in the film that actually made me go, what the fuck? Like, I was awe-stricken. I was looking at the screen just being like, I can't believe what I'm watching. It's not even a massive shot, you know, it's not to do with the scale or anything. It's just watch it, just check it out.
Hey, I can see you. Come on out here.
Whoa.
I can see you hiding.
I mean, how creative was that, right? Like, how insane was that idea? Having a shadow of an approaching horse come through a keyhole and have that shadow frame the interior. This is a different level of cinematography, and it just feels so fresh in comparison with other things I've seen. CGI wasn't used at all in this film, at least not as far as I'm aware. Maybe a little bit here and there, but for the most part it looked pretty practical. The use of real locations in India, Nambia's dunes, the Blue City, it all creates this sense of place. You can actually tell they're there, and yes, technology can go to the lengths of replicating this in some form, but it just hits different when you know the actors are on location. You can actually feel it from them. It just feels right. Even the action scenes, I mean, come on, that's outrageous. How big was this film's budget actually? Let me look this up. 30 million. Nah, there's no way. Morbius had 75. Where the fuck does that money go? Electric State, 320 million. This is a notice to say, if you think money makes films better, it doesn't. It can help, but my god. The costume design is equally incredible and vibrant. It evokes this mythical iconography, just sandwiching all the greatest heroes from all over the world. And Charles Darwin, for some reason. Hey, Darwin is a beast in this film, okay? I'm not gonna shit talk him. I like his monkey. The acting is great across the board. Lee Pace does an amazing job at encapsulating helplessness. Even though there's glimmers of enthusiasm in this storytelling, it's for the sake of making the lie work.
Are you with me, bandits?
We won't get it again!
And of course, Alexandria is the real soul of the film, and her actor was untrained, and a lot of her performance comes from capturing unscripted moments. A lot of her stuff was just off the dome, and she's one of the best child actors I've seen in a long time. She's brilliant. Really, this film is all about stories built on sacrifice. The ending really took me by surprise because it was edited in so seamlessly. In the final montage, we see silent footage of classic stuntmen risking their lives for cinema, and this is Roy's legacy, and broken though it is, it becomes a part of a lineage of pain and suffering. But it's also amazing, you know, the stunts, the injuries, the risks these people went through. It kind of built cinema. They laid the groundwork for all the action sequences we see to this day. And it's nice because what they went through and what Roy goes through isn't for nothing. What's interesting is the film was a complete failure on release, and I wasn't too surprised about this when I realised it had no studio involvement. The marketing was terrible, it made very little money, it got bombarded by bad reviews, so it just didn't get seen all that much. Maybe it came across as one of those big art house films which are kind of pretentious and don't really have a lot to tell when, you know, under the bonnet they usually do have a lot to tell. They're just not mainstream genre films which can attract a massive array of audiences because they're not sure what they're going into. And yeah, to be fair, I'm not surprised. I think going into this film you have no idea what you're going to end up with, which is fantastic because it's unconventional and I don't like knowing. It was different in every aspect, from narrative pacing, the script, and a lot of it just went over people's heads when it first came out. And what's funny is when people watch it now with an open mind, they realise the film's strength is in its originality. It's the sheer willpower Tarsem had to keep the project afloat. You know, he worked his arse off to make this. He wanted to create stylized, very saturated, fantastical shots all around the globe, which, you know, I get isn't everyone's cup of tea in terms of how it's shot. I loved it. He wanted to craft a heartfelt story around that, and you can either say he shot in the dark and made a mess of the story, or you can say he effectively documented an eccentric technical achievement, and the story, with all its nuances, make it a moving masterpiece. I mean, to me, I was blown away by this. I absolutely love this film. I think it exists in its own universe, in a completely different realm, detached from anything mainstream, anything studio developed. It's in its own bubble. So it's time to rank the film. This is going to get tricky because I feel like I'm going to end up loving a lot of these films. It's going to get hard. I'm going to slap it right here where there's no competition. Nice one. It's on its own. Okay, next film. Another Round. It sounds like a standard night at Wetherspoons, to be fair. The poster does have Mads Mikkelsen's skull in a pint, so I'm interested to see where this goes. When I was watching Another Round, it really occurred to me how profound the application of drug usage has been in storytelling. So before I get into this film, I have to mention that I do not condone excessive drinking on this channel. I feel like YouTube would not be a fan of that, and it's just not a great thing to put across to people. And I'm a guy who loves a drink, okay, but too much can be too much. I think there's a fine line between enjoyment and reliance, and this film leans into the latter very well. It's interesting because when I started watching this film, it shows you this ideal portrait of teenage fun. They're all participating in an event where you drink a ridiculous amount of beer and run around a lake. So it's basically pub golf on another level. The film stars Mads Mikkelsen as Martin, and he's a history teacher suffering from a midlife crisis.
Fick du lämnat din rapport?
His family life isn't great, he feels really empty about things. So Martin, along with 3 colleagues, decides to test a theory of Norwegian psychiatrist Finn Skårderud. These pronunciations are gonna kill me. So the theory states that humans are born with a 0.5% blood alcohol deficiency. So by maintaining a low level of intoxication throughout the day, the teachers should, theoretically, feel better about themselves, more confident in their lives.
En halv promille, siger du, ikke? Hvor meget en halv promille?
Det 2 glas vin, ikke? Og så skal...
And obviously, alcohol makes people lose their inhibitions. What begins as a liberating experiment soon spins into something darker and more dangerous. So the film dares to ask, what if life was better if there is a little bit of alcohol in your system every working day? It's not a great idea, it's more of a cry for help. The teachers are all missing a part of themselves and they are all desperately trying to feel something, which is a common cause of, steadily becoming what you'd consider an alcoholic. So I didn't find this out until a little later on, when I was researching, but the context of this film is what makes it so powerful. It was directed by a Danish filmmaker called Thomas Vinterberg. He's got a great track record of very introspective stories. I use that word a lot, introspective, I need to stop it. So the film was originally intended as a theatrical celebration of alcohol's role in world history, and I could see that being a thing, it definitely has played a huge part. But the project completely shifted its tone after Vinterberg's daughter got into a car accident and unfortunately passed away. This was just before filming began, and her death completely changed the narrative of this film. So after Martin and his colleagues start trying out this experiment, their results are pretty positive. Martin reconnects with his students, his wife, and even his sense of self. But of course, with all intoxicants, the line between just enough and too much begins to blur a little bit. So the group starts pushing their limits even further and ups the blood alcohol levels. They're drinking more recklessly and facing the consequences both professionally and personally. They went from microdosing to becoming full-fledged alcoholics. I remember one line when one of them asks, "Are we alcoholics?" And then the other's like, no, we're not alcoholics because we get to choose when we drink and alcoholics have to rely on it, they need it. Obviously, the audience can see that this entire group is in denial and they are absolutely relying on this stuff. So a cool thing is the director, Vinterberg, got all the actors to do drunk rehearsals prior to the shoot to get them all used to being in a drunken state so they could replicate it.
Du får förklara för barnen vad som har hänt, Martin.
They called it booze camp, which is awesome. They used natural lights a lot, which echoed the Dogma 95 roots of Vinterberg's earlier work. So Dogma 95 was something that Vinterberg and Lars von Trier created, and effectively it was something that allowed them to step away and break the rules of conventional filmmaking. The editing is rhythmic. I love that it captured the swings between control and chaos. I thought the editing on that was really nice. Very subtle changes, but then when you clock it, it hits. The later scene when Martin tries to reconcile with his wife and she orders a glass of wine, it comes full circle and it really speaks a lot about the reliance on alcohol to manage your emotions.
Så hvad så?
Tag lige en tår vand. Og så lige få samlet tankerne, ikke?
Their relationship goes through so many peaks and troughs, and it's interesting now seeing it slightly drift apart, and it's kind of in limbo, and you don't really know where it's going to go. It's a very realistic scenario. I can see this thing happening thousands and thousands of times with people in real life. Martin internalizes so much pain that when he finally breaks, it really hits home, and it's interesting to see him go from tears to dancing without any care in the world, and I loved this ending. I really loved this ending. It's really bittersweet after all the events that happen, all the repercussions of the drinking. I think what really impressed me was how you're left sort of in between things. You know, the film doesn't demonize drinking, but it doesn't glorify it either. It basically shows us why people need it, or at least think they do, and in doing so it captures something more universal, which is the yearning to feel again, to risk again, and to live, but that can come with severe consequences if you take it too far. I loved this film. It couldn't be more different from The Fall if it tried. I guess I'll put it below. This is hard. Not much of a reason why, apart from the fact that I very rarely get blown away by a film's creativity, like what The Fall did. So yeah, that's what I've landed on, and I can't be a fence sitter. I think fence sitting is boring. Okay, it's time for the third film. Chungking Express. This is a film I've actually heard of, and I've been wanting to watch this for a while, so I'm quite lucky that I've effectively been forced into it by the dartboard. The darts have dictated my fate. Okay, Chungking Express. To put it into academic terms, this is one of them ones, you get me? This film felt really cerebral. You go into this world and you're looking into people's lives and you're trying to figure out where the story's going, what it's all about. But luckily, the deeper I got into this, the more I enjoyed it. You have to let it sit with you, and this is something I actually think I need to watch again for a second time to fully grasp all of the elements. Because despite how simple the film feels at the start, there is so much going on. And I heard California Dreamin' about 60 million times, so whenever I hear this song again, I'm not going to think about 60s hippies, I'm going to think about Faye Wong vibing in a takeaway. To be fair, I'm not mad about that. So Chungking Express is a crime romance, and it really goes into the fleetingness of modern love. So basically Tinder personified. It's the way time slips past us in neon fragments, and in a world where everyone is in motion, there's these two guys, two absolute legends.
每一个人都有失恋的时候，而每一次我失恋呢，我就会去跑步。
One of them is obsessed with expiration dates, and the other is obsessed with takeout orders. Just trying to hold on to moments that have already disappeared. So this film was shot in 28 days because Wong Kar-wai was taking a break from shooting another film, Ashes of Time. It just comes to show how insane he is that even on a break, my guy is making a film. Wong Kar-wai is built different. The budget for Chungking Express was really low, but the way it was put together, you'd think there was a ridiculous amount of planning involved, but for the most part, it was kind of off the cuff. It's set in Hong Kong in 1997, so just prior to the handover to the People's Republic of China, and it sets the tone really well, sets the scene amazingly. Wong collaborated with Christian Doyle, who was the cinematographer, and he also worked on Fallen Angels, which is a gorgeous film. If you like cinematography or anything, I just know that film is on your mood board. And Christopher helped define the film's off-kilter aesthetic with the handheld shots, blurred motion, and saturated neons, which feel much more like a memory than anchored in reality. A lot of these shots were actually at a much lower frame rate, as you can clearly tell. Just 6 FPS. No, the film isn't buffering, it's very stylistic. These types of shots are really reminiscent of the French New Wave style of filmmaking.
嗰日落好大雨，望住個玻璃窗。
So the first cop is Cop 223, and he's played by Takeshi Kaneshiro. And he's hung up on an ex who left him a month ago. Sad times. He fixates on canned pineapples with the expiration date of May the 1st, which is also his emotional deadline to move on. Basically, one night he meets a mysterious woman with a blonde wig. She's wrapped up in her own dangerous world of smuggling and betrayal, and their connection is very brief, very weird, but it's quite profound. Having said that, if someone came up to me in a club and started offering me canned pineapples, I'd be a bit confused. Hey there, I see you finished your drink. What did you have, margarita? Yeah, cocktails are nice, but I got something a little better for you. You wanna see? Eat me pineapples now. What do you mean you're calling security? The other cop is Cop 663, played by Tony Leung. He's getting over a breakup in his own way. Just normal things like talking to his apartment's furniture and going to buy a coffee every other day. And in this fast food shop is where Faye works, who's a quirky worker who likes to dance to the same bloody song all the time. Faye has a secret little crush and she ends up entering his life and slightly rearranges everything. Literally. The two cops never intersect in the story, but their lives and situations do echo one another in a way. This is Wong Kar-wai's way of working with time, which is the inherent theme of the story. You experience the film in different memory, and their existence is measured in dates and smells and songs. So what's interesting is through the sound design and the visuals, we understand that the city never stops. So with both of the cops, even though they feel really lonely and everything feels stagnant in their lives, it isn't, everything's moving on. The cops are surrounded by so many people and yet they are completely alone, and they don't have long monologues or dramatic breakdowns like you would see in the other films. Their emotions are expressed in the small things like repetition, buying the same drink every day, going on the same run route every day, calling the same answering machine, day in, day out. And after watching, I really came to terms with the fact that Chungking Express is really about quiet regrets and the unsaid feelings, the things that could have been. It's an unconventional type of romance, and it's something which happens all too often. And to me, it feels like this film had to exist, because the idea of potential relationships and talking about things that could have been, it's a very necessary thing to talk about. And the ending of the film really solidified that for me. When I was watching the film, I actually noted down a line, and that line was, if memories could be canned, would they also have expiry dates? That's pretty much the question Chungking Express leaves you with. It's one of the best films I've ever seen in my entire life, but it's going at the bottom of the list. Pushing aside the fact that Chungking is a generational masterpiece, I just preferred another round. Probably an unpopular opinion, but I just resonated with it more. I reckon on my second rewatch, it's got potential to go higher. Like I said at the start, it's one of them ones. My voice is dying. Nevertheless, thank you so much for watching this video. Maybe episode 2 will take me onto a greater journey to watch even more interesting stuff. But until then, feel free to subscribe, it means a lot, and check out my other stuff. Take care.